Are we muted?
No, they can hear you.
Hello, everyone in the room and online. Thank you for coming. Yeah, so I'm pleased to present for the second time Lucia Nicastro, who's been on the secondment with us before and obviously enjoyed it so much that she's come back for a second go. So we must be doing something right. And she's coming through the ATTER program, which she's going to talk a little bit about. She's going to present this case study that's one of the Italian case studies, and then we're going to have some Q&A at the end and discussion around it as a case study. But yeah, the ATTER program is about to come to an end, so it's a bit of a shame, but this is a good way, I think, to get a sense of what's been happening in the project, at least in one of the case studies. I think 16 case studies or more, so.
Yeah, this one more, yeah. Because there was a new one. So yeah. Pleased to meet you all. My name is Lucia, like you said. And so I'm going to be talking to you today kind of about a very interesting initiative in Italy where I live and work, and how that relates to an agroecological transition. So yeah, let me see the thing. So yeah. Chris gave a little overview, but I'll say it again. Introduction. I'm going to go a little bit into the ATTER project, and then into the case study in Italy, and then one initiative, which I think is really interesting within the case study. And then after that, we're going to do some Q&A and see what you guys think. Also because, like last year, I was here and I did a seminar kind of like this, and we spoke about the Coventry case study. So now we can talk about the Italian one and maybe kind of best practices to share with each other, because that's kind of the point of the ATTER project, but I'm going to get in there.
Can we just ask that the online attendees can hear the room?
You have to say something.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, Rachel, we can hear everything clearly. Yeah.
Excellent.
Good.
Oh, let me try. I'll try. Excellent. So I don't need to keep on pushing it. Excellent. So this is kind of a timeline, because you're probably wondering, like, okay, but how did you end up in Italy? You don't sound Italian. What's going on? And yeah, I kind of had a long timeline, so I just kind of wanted to break that down quickly to like how I actually ended up here today. So in 2017, I kind of started my career at the with the U.S. federal government. I did an internship for the Information Security and Oversight Office, and that kind of got me interested in kind of like public work, and like maybe I can, have an internship with an institution. And then at the same time, I also had an internship with a holistic nutritionist, and that was actually my gateway into learning a little bit about agriculture. And because they're like, oh, well, you should eat organic. Why should I eat organic? What's the point of eating organic? And so then I started to research, and I was like, well, this is actually really interesting. So then I was like, okay, so how can I put those two things together in my career? Then fast forward a few years, I'm getting my bachelor's degree, and I have study abroad experience in Italy. And it was kind of crazy because no one else applied. And so by default, I was the only student. So I always heard like, I got one-on-one teaching, with all these super qualified professors, just kind of by luck. And that's kind of where I started to learn about organic agriculture. But yeah, that's the reason why I'm the only one in the photo. It's because no one else signed up. And so while I was over there, I had an interview for my wine business class with this wine blogger, and I was like, look, I'm really passionate about this, and I want to make a difference. What can I do? And he said, have you ever heard of the University of Gastronomic Sciences? And I said, no. And he's like, if you want to make a difference, you should go there. And I took him so seriously that I decided to get my master's degree. But fast forwarding a little bit, I start to plan. I'm like, okay, multi-year, start taking Italian lessons. I got a bachelor's, kind of like custom that I created myself in agricultural business, work on some farms, which I think is really important because it helped me to you know, actually get some hands-on experience, which was amazing. And I got to meet so many wonderful people. So yeah, then I did a master's in world food cultures and mobility, which it's a fancy way of saying gastronomy, which is a fancy way of saying like food discovery, like wine, cheese, all that good stuff. But there's a little bit of agroecology in there too. And then after that, I ended up at the at CIHEAM Bari, which is the institute that I work for now, and I'm kind of starting out research. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about my organization because it's not a university and it's not a nonprofit, and these were sort of things that working there I had to kind of figure out. It wasn't even necessarily apparent to me in the beginning because it's kind of its own, like it's an intergovernmental organization, meaning that it is, unlike a nonprofit, which is funded by individuals, intergovernmental organizations get financial support from countries. So like the UN, for instance, or NATO. So this one is about the Mediterranean, and it was founded on multilateral cooperation in the Mediterranean. So the original members were 13 different countries. And so because of this, there's 4 different branches. But yeah, that was the point. It's like we're doing international relations stuff. But from that, and this was in the 1960s in France, from that, you get postgraduate education, for example, in Mediterranean organic agriculture or integrated pest management, for instance. And it's really interesting because all of these graduate studies are scholarship. So it's very competitive. And it's a small cohort of very, I would say, amazing people, really. And then you also have research, which is what I'm doing. So, you know, but not just in the Mediterranean, but all over the world. And so you end up with this place that technically, when you're there, you're not in Italy, you're on international soil. And you meet people from all over the world. And that's so cool. Like, and all over the Mediterranean, I've made friends from people in Kosovo, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, like, you know, that like it's just the actual diversity of the place is one of, Ethiopia, and that's kind of what I like about it. So yeah, ended up there. And so what I'm currently working on right now is 4 different research projects. Just briefly, grass sealing is about gender equality in rural areas and how women can innovate not just in agriculture but in other areas as well. For instance, we do this living lab with this group of women from the Puglia region, and we ask them about their barriers and what they can do. And they are all like women entrepreneurs. And for instance, one of them is part of a community therapy center on a farm for people that deal with drug addictions, and kind of rehabilitating them and even giving them work on the farm, and things like that. A bunch of different projects and how they can work together. Then there's organic targets, which is about reaching 25% of organic production in the EU by 2030, and also a substantially increased organic aquaculture. And so, for instance, it's really about the question of why aren't people going organic? What can be done to make people go organic? Let's make a plan. So, for instance, getting together a bunch of different experts in Italy to do a backcasting workshop where it's like, here's our future. What do we want to see? How do we get there? And going backwards from that. Then these 2 projects, ATTER, of course I'm going to discuss, and MSCAdvocacy, which are actually connected because, which is ironic because I work for 2 different people on those projects, but thematically they are connected because ATTER is all about exchange, like what I'm doing right now. I come here, you go there, we exchange knowledge. But this is on a meta level. It's like, why do people participate in these exchanges? what can be done to increase participation in these exchanges, what holds them back. For instance, like visa denials or cost of living. So all of these projects are funded under either Horizon Europe or Horizon 2020. So Horizon Europe is the EU's key funding program for research and innovation. And it's a lot, as you can see. 82 billion pounds is nothing to sneeze at for this framework. So Horizon Europe is the current framework that we're in. And then Horizon 2020 was the past framework, which was still 67 billion pounds. Now, saying that, with all this money, you can see here that this is the ATTER project, and one of the main principles of these sorts of projects within this framework is that they have to be transparent and publicly accessible. So I just found this by Googling, right? And so as you can see, unfortunately, it is almost at an end. And then, but it's funded under the MSCA, Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, which I'm going to get into in a minute. So, and then you can see the EU contribution of €1 million, which might seem like, not €1 million is not bad, but when you consider it out of the whole, you can see it's a very small portion. And then it's coordinated by IRE. So ATTER is the only project out of the 4 I'm working on that's funded by Horizon 2020. And then the other 3 are Horizon Europe. And this is just to, again, give an example that, all of these projects are funded by the European Commission. They are sustained by the European Commission through the Horizon Europe Fund. So yeah, just a brief description of MSCA actions, or Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. So it's kind of like the program within Horizon Europe for exchange. So there are 5 types. There's doctoral networks, postdoctoral fellowships, staff exchanges, co-fund, and MSCA, and citizens. So I want to highlight 2 of these, which is the staff exchanges, which is what I'm doing now, aka secondments, or B, postdoctoral fellowships, which is actually the only type, or maybe there are other types, but it is a type of action that you can apply for as an individual. So if you are, postdoc, you can, if you are supported by your institution, you can actually apply for these positions, which can be like, 2 to 3 years. And the point is that it's either within the EU, but the point is it's another country. So the whole point is just exchange and travel, really. And then the staff exchanges, which are more short term, you can do for between 1 month and 1 year. But the thing is, as an individual, I can't apply to do a staff exchange. What had to happen is a consortium of partners had to get together and apply under MSCA for, using a proposal. And then with that, they can have a bunch of points that you can travel between each other and learn from each other. So the point is that they're international and intersectoral. So for these types of exchanges, you can't go from one academic institution to another academic institution. You have to, have public and private together, unless you are going outside of the EU, in which case you can do it between them. But in theory, you're supposed to do just academic and private partnerships. So yeah. So that brings us to our project, which is the ATTER project, so Agroecological Transitions for Territorial Food Systems, which is, again, it's interdisciplinary and multi-sectoral exchange. And the point of this is for agroecological transitions. So we are going between different points, different case studies, of which there are 16 plus really, because there's a new one in the University of Vermont in the US. Yeah, and they take place between 5 different countries, France, Italy, the UK, Brazil, and the United States. To, you share knowledge and like, okay, so we want to have an agroecological transition. How do we do that? and comparing and contrasting. So for instance, we all had to do the same kind of timeline of our case study to describe, you know, what's going on, how close are we, what can we do, how can we share. So yeah, it's really all about networking and exchanging knowledge. So these are all the case studies. Well, most of them. Again, like I said, there's a new one here at the University of Vermont. But I'm going to be talking to you guys about this one, the Alto Salento case study. So it's in the Puglia region of Italy, which if you see, imagine Italy as a heeled boot. If you snap the heel off, that's Puglia, and that's Alto Salento is within that region. So zooming in a little bit more, we're peeling back the layers. This is now in the Puglia region. We have the province of Brindisi, which is this big port city here. You can see the port. It was actually used, you know, for the Crusades and stuff, because you can get to like Jerusalem, for instance, kind of along that route. So this area has a very rich history and culture going back, you know, thousands of years. Like, I think it's not here exactly, but a little bit inland. There's this a city called Matera that's one of the 3 oldest cities in the world. So, I mean, people have been here since forever, basically. And, you know, so within this province, you have this area here, which is the Alto Salento case study. So it encompasses Brindisi, but it also encompasses the town of Ostuni, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. So what's you know, if I wanted to orient myself in this place, what's it characterized by? What is the, you know, if I go to Alto Salento, what am I going to see? So it's rich in natural resources, and you have these centuries-old olive groves, which, you know, so this region produces a lot of the olive oil of Italy, but, you know, also abroad. And it's, you know, these are like old trees. You know, in Spain, you have a lot of these kind of more intensive agriculture where it's like, you know, they have all the olive trees really close together. So, you know, a lot of the olive oil that's produced internationally is actually from Spain. It's not from Italy. Spain is the biggest olive oil producing country in the world. But Italy, these ones, I mean, of course, you will find intensive versions, but all these trees are like centuries old. They are old. And unfortunately, and I'm going to talk about this a bit later, they are getting devastated by this disease called Xylella that has killed, in the Puglia region alone, over 21 million trees, some of these century-old trees. So we have olive groves, we have I mean, not just olive groves, although you do see a lot of it, which is a monoculture. Again, disease bad, but you know, wine, it also dairy products and vegetables. Then you have trulli. So this is called the trullo, plural trulli, and so you have these, like, you know, little stone huts that were used for storage, or you could live there. Then we have underground olive mills, and, you know, tons of ancient trails. Like, ecotourism is a big thing. You go on a bike and you just go around, and, you know, there's the beautiful, you know, groves and the fresh air and all of that. So especially the north is characterized by multifunctional farms. So what I mean by multifunctional farms is that they're not just there to sell food, right? They are agritourism, they are educational, or there's social projects like the one I told you about earlier, where, you know, it's a therapy community for people with drug addictions, for instance. Or, you know, this is there was another woman, for instance, that's like, I have an olive mill, but I want to change the old part of the olive mill, which was my father's, into a museum. And I want children to come and I want to tell the story, you know, yeah, also for tourists, but also just to educate youth. Like, a lot of the people that I've met through these initiatives, they're like, we want more youth involvement. We want to get kids involved, because kind of one of the undercurrents is that this area has a third youth unemployment. So brain drain as part of the EU is a problem. The youth are to just go like, well, why would I be here when I can go someplace like, I don't know, Sweden, that might have better job opportunities for me. But some of them also come back, like boomerang. It's a kind of called like boomerang people that, they go out, they go to all these different countries, they're like, I'm going to stay here, but then they actually come back and they invest in their home and try to make it better with all the things that they've learned. So yeah, characterized by multifunctional farms, especially in the north, and that helps to kind of push for this agroecological transition because, you get value added, you get, value added products, for instance. Like I said, these therapy community, they have a processing lab. They make tomato sauce basically, but they put their label on it and they said, this comes from people who are, struggling with addiction. Here's our story, and things like that. So, yeah. So, and then there's an increasing attention to quality, in large part because of tourists, which is key because, when you speak, some of these people have said like, oh yeah, well, my primary market, again, with, for example, the woman with the olive oil mill, she's like, my primary target are tourists because I produce organic olive oil that's made in a sustainable way. And so, locals say, well, I can get that anywhere. Why would I pay a price premium for this when I can just get it wherever I want? Italians joke like, yeah, this stuff is so good you can just put it in a car like gasoline, the car will run car on it just fine, So they're like, I can eat well at home. Why would I, pay extra for this? So, a lot of this organic stuff is mostly marketed to tourists. So, but yeah, whether it's for tourists or not, it's a tourist area. It's kind of almost a bit like Barcelona or Venice. It's very touristy. So there is so much that it's like, okay, there is an increase in organic cultivation because they're mindful. So then the south is more, productions that are like, okay, we're just making the products. We're, not going to bother with all that tourist and education stuff. But even there, they're starting to have some more focus on, value added through processing, making, vegetable jars of like, vegetables or, the also going into PDO, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide, or like territorial marketing initiatives to make it more attractive. So even they are using different strategies or like direct selling, for instance. So yeah, PDO or protected designation of origin. Have any of you guys ever seen this before? Yeah. Okay, great. So this is one of the things that they are using as a value added. And basically what it means is that there are laws saying this can only be produced in a certain place in a certain way. For example, I tried to find one from the Alto Salento, and I did find one. So of course it's an extra virgin olive oil. So the Colline di Brindisi, or Hills of Brindisi, is a PDO, again, protected designation of origin, extra virgin olive oil that is, has to be produced in these 8 municipalities around the province of Brindisi. So not just in Alto Salento, but pretty much around that area. And like by law, it has to have 70% of the Oliorola cultivar, and then it can have a blend of up to 30% of the others. And you can't use like super, it has to be manually or mechanically. And so, yeah, it's kind of a way of guaranteeing the quality. And I'm sure has anyone ever seen this mark here on a wine bottle?
Yeah, that's the good stuff. You want the yellow one, because that if you go, and this is just in Italian, so the reason why the letters are different is because it's in Italian, but it's the same thing. Denominazione origine controllata garantita. So denomination of origin that's controlled and guaranteed. So that's the best one. You want the yellow one if you want like a good Italian wine, and then the blue one, which is just DOC, which is like still good, but maybe less so. So yeah, what else are they doing, right, to kind of push towards the agroecological transition? They have some reserves that are now legally protected, such as the Torre Reserve. So there are some EU funds going to promote ecotourism, aka like sustainable development, through, for example, the LEADER framework. And these have managed to kind of involve some actors. But the issue is that, you know, personal relations remain key for success, but then also, you know, they haven't really consolidated that much. You have a few consolidated networks, but it's still a little bit more scattered. But still, these frameworks help. So I'm going to go into one of them. So this is the LEADER framework. It was launched in 1991, and this is a Europe-wide thing. This is not just Italy. It's funded by the EU Rural Development Program, and so it's a way to encourage participation in like the local sustainable development strategy. Because I mean, the world is developing, right? It's just about how you direct it and how you use it. So it's like, okay, this is going to happen. Let's take charge of it. Let's actually become protagonists here. So how do you do this, right? Not exactly the easiest task, right? Oh my gosh, actually involve local people and local decisions, right? So the way they do this is through local action groups. So they're kind of a nexus point to concentrate all of these financial and human resources from institutions, from private sector, from civil society, and they basically write up a sustainable development strategy, and they have the power to select different projects to kind of make this almost like portfolio of like, we want to develop our region for, you know, such and such time frame, right? These are the projects we want to invest in. Here's what we want to do. And their leadership can't just be made up of institutions. They have to have at least 50% private people as well. So yeah, they make the different decisions. And importantly, again, scatter dynamic, they're supposed to make more cohesion and dialogue between, you know, rural actors, which can sometimes not. So, oh, right. So this translates to, let's plan together a new strategy of local development for Alto Salento. So this is from the Alto Salento local action group. So I've been to this place, and it's actually where the first meeting of the initiative that I'm going to talk about took place, because they're so kind of key in bringing all these things together. So yeah, that's the Alto Salento local action group. That's their logo. And so yeah, once they get, let's hope, right, that they get funded through LEADER, they then, you know, do a lot of the development management, you know, monitoring, payment, and then like control and evaluation tasks. So yeah, but they have to submit an application just like everyone else, and they're not necessarily going to be successful. So, you know, they have to kind of think carefully about the budget and what they want to do. So let's take an example, right? This was their action plan. Well, I cherry picked a little bit, but their action plan for 2014 to 2020. You know, this is translated from Italian. So action one, they want to protect the landscape and, you know, do kind of sustainable development. They want to, but yeah, you can see here loud and clear, slow tourism,
EU funds slow tourism to kind of promote agroecological transition, and then create networking. We want to try and do this, which is good. They're they're like, okay, these are the things we want to do. Within each of these actions, you have different tasks and awareness raising campaigns, which is kind of indirectly related to territorial marketing, which is also another big thing. But okay, yeah, let's talk about maybe some of the more brutal realities of the situation, right? We have Xylella that I mentioned before. So it's a disease transmitted by insects that they lay their eggs in the grass. So this is a tree that's been affected by Xylella. So this is after Xylella has done its work. And it's, again, really been devastating. It killed 21 million trees in the Puglia region alone. And, to the point where it's kind of this cultural phenomenon. People do like land art with it, for instance, to just kind of creatively try and process this. But that's not the only issue, right? Tourism is good, yes. Too much tourism is bad. And that is a risk here, absolutely, absolutely. And gentrification, because a lot of the properties that are being bought up are for like B&Bs. They're not, you have, an old ruin, right? What do you decide to do with it? Well, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, they're being renovated, which is great, but they're being renovated for luxury tourism, things that normal people can't access, and that end up driving up the prices for normal people. And there's also, again, connected with tourism, there's the issue of losing authenticity and control, because, for instance, right, with one of the ladies that I keep talking about, she was saying, I'm worried because we have a lot of, Tunisian olives, but like marketed kind of as like, it's not actual Italian olives. We're losing this. Or even before I came here, right, and I was studying at North, I had a class with a communication professor who was Italian, and she said, some of what we do these classes where we make pasta together, homemade pasta, but I don't do that. I'm a career woman. I don't go home and like roll out homemade pasta, so it's kind of like we have to create this narrative for that. It's a dance, but not for us, so it's almost kind of like this banal shadow of like what's actually true and authentic and concerned about that. Even with the woman who has the therapy center, right? She's like, I'm caught between having more production, right, and making a product, and the quality of the product and its authenticity and its relation to a story that really helps to pull these people out of poverty and help them on their journey and make them successful. So she's like, even internally, I struggled with this. So yeah, this is an example, right? So if you guys remember the Trullo that I showed you earlier, that kind of like very humble, nondescript, this was not made from a Trullo. This is not renovated. They just made a normal house and put the stone cones on top, so that's they're not renovating the old thing. They're just kind of making something. I mean, okay, yes, which it's good, right? You stimulate the economy, people come, they, you're building on it, but it's not, there's something lost here, for sure. So that brings me to kind of the heart of this presentation, which is talking about this initiative at the heart of all of these dynamics. And it is a community of practice in the town of Ostuni. So first of all, what even is a community of practice? A community of practice, it's kind of like a bit of a vague definition, but the point is that they kind of get together to work on a problem. And it's kind of referred to like the original
communities of practice were like medieval guilds, for instance. So you kind of have people, they get together and they're trying to solve a problem and, kind of increase a professional skill, but they want to, it's like, okay, it's kind of like voluntary and informal. It's not, we don't want this to be like a formal professional thing. So yeah, it's otherwise described as a living curriculum. So you could argue that in its informality, it can be kind of more effective than some of these, like, an official course, for instance, because it's just a bunch of people at the end of the day getting together. But sometimes that's kind of where the best stuff happens. This community of practice is within the heart of this town called Ostuni, which is a tourist town. You might have heard of it. You might have even been there because it's kind of famous now. It's this kind of, and I'll show you pictures. It's this like white town sitting atop a hill, and from the top of that hill you can actually see the Adriatic Sea. So it's this beautiful. You have the sea, the hills, the olive groves, the terraces, everything you want for like a nice vacation, pretty much. So, but within it, there's a garden that was abandoned in the 1970s. This beautiful terraced garden on this hill. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But yeah, it was abandoned, and now this group of people is trying to bring it back. And they are supported, so they in an organic way, right? And they're supported by all these other organizations. So for one, of course, my organization. That's the FAO Mountain Partnership. That's Slow Food Puglia. Oh, they weren't really, they're less central, but Slow Food Puglia definitely central. Then these are organic certifiers that they've been crucial in detailing about group organic certification, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, of like why normal organic certification is hard and expensive, especially in these sorts of settings, and helping them with that. University of Bari, which is the capital of the Bari is the capital of the Puglia region, and they're, I think, involved in the most fascinating aspect of this project, which is that they have brought back a species of eggplant from almost total extinction. If they were not farming it in this area, it would most likely be gone at this point. And then also we have this technical high school, and they've been absolutely amazing because they put together a lot of the seedlings. They do a lot of the groundwork so that this can be a success, while also learning about it in the process. So yeah, these are the gardens, right? They're owned by the town of Ostuni, and they decided a few years ago that they want to redevelop them, but in a sustainable way, because they were abandoned in the 1970s, and they want to basically make it not just a tourist attraction, but also a tourist attraction, but not just a tourist attraction, but also to bring back to have educational activities for youth, and to kind of make it an example of this is what we can do if we put our minds to it. This can be replicated. We want this to be a pilot project. We want people to get excited when they look at this. Also because it's pretty unique. It's not just a garden. It's a massive urban garden in a beautiful place, and that's saving these varieties from going extinct, because of all these institutional actors getting involved and helping to support this work. But it also has an interesting archaeological foundation, because this, it kind of has this complex, or it used to have this complex terrace system of water with canals and cisterns that were made out of stone. So, and this was a communal system, and it was effective to save water because, you'd have the rain, and then one would fill up and then kind of go down layer by layer. It'd fill up to a certain threshold and then it'd go down. So it would save water for the people, and it was a communal system that was shared by everybody. And it was like very complex. Not only that, but some of these cisterns, aka water tanks, that these farmers are using are actually the tombs from the 4th to 5th century BCE, from the Messapian era, which is before Roman time. They're just, watching the garden. This ancient stuff. So some of the people that have got interested in revitalizing it are professors of archaeology. They're like, we want to dig here. This isn't just a garden. It's sitting on top of a treasure trove of history and culture that goes back literally millennia. So yeah. So the township decided we want to bring this back from the brink of abandonment. So they set up this system where plot holders, or assignees, they have different plots, and they're supposed to take care of it. So these plot holders have come together to kind of organize and for better management of the gardens, because it's not perfect, and I'll go into that in a sec. But I want to note that even though there is a cooperative that is centrally involved with this, most of the plot holders are not, they're not farmers. They're teachers, like I said, professors, or they're involved with restaurants. So, they want to make it, they're really interested in the whole example. They're not just like, I want to garden and farm and stuff. They're like, I'm interested in it on a meta level. What can we do with this? So it's facilitated by us, and then by Slow Food Puglia and the cooperative, which is the one big farmer that's involved with all of this. And they've been there since the beginning. They're like, yay, people! It's not just me anymore trying to farm this land and bring back this abandoned land with all this broken infrastructure from the brink, right? So these are the facilitators, and we help the assignees or plot holders, go through the steps that they need, which is the killer in Italian society. So just kind of giving a little general timeline. This is the general ATTER timeline. So I was here almost exactly a year ago with this exact same timeline, but for Coventry that I put together. So all the case studies had to have these timelines. And I get that it's a lot and you probably can't read it. I'm just going to bring up a couple interesting points. So yeah, Zero crisis, a little bit before 2020. The different leader frameworks, again, you have 5 of them. And then the local action group starting in 1998. And then going a little bit more, we have the cooperative in 2001, right? And then again, where is it? 2014, it should be. Here we go, right? With the urban gardens. And then this is where, so that's 2014. Now this is 2017, 2018. The township decides they want to revitalize this, which honestly, kind of a big deal because, like I've said a million times, it's a tourist trap. And it's right next to the biggest parking lot in town. And so they've mentioned this at meetings, it's they're just itching to pave that and have more parking lot because it's always full. And it's kind of a small town surrounded by other really cute small towns. So people that go there on vacation, you can't really get around it easily with public transport. You kind of have to use a car. So there's this kind of pressure with the big parking lot literally right there to just stop all this and just put down some more cement again over these ancient archaeological treasures and just be like, we can make more money this way. So they did say, yes, we want to revitalize this. And then we had the community of practice starting in 2023. So
yeah, here's one of the things that's important about this is slow food, right? Have any of you not heard of slow food, or do you know, or do you have some familiarity with slow food? Okay, all right. So I'll kind of skim through this a little bit, but basically, they've created a slow food procedure for the first time here based off this eggplant. And why this eggplant? Well, I'll get into that. But what's the point of a procedure, right? This is what slow food is like. This is what we can do for you. We can give you training activities, promote your products at our events, such as Terra Madre, and, you know, kind of make articles about it and promote it through our various channels and use our networking. Because a lot of the students that came there, I'd say, like, so why did you do this? Why did you get a degree at this university that's really kind of the heart of the slow food movement? They say, honestly, the connections. Like, slow food just has good connections in a lot of different countries. It's a global movement. And so they're like, we will let you tap into this and our kind of marketing guru expertise, which honestly, they are pretty good at marketing. So, you know, kind of branding it to make it something that people want to buy and want to eat. So they made it with this eggplant. Oh yeah, and that's Terra Madre, which is their, you know, big event that in Turin, Italy, because it's an Italian movement that started when in Rome, McDonald's opened up in like the 1980s, and this man named Carlo Petrini said, "What are you doing?" and gave out like spaghetti to all the protesters, being like, "We're not going to eat this stuff, you know, not fast food. Let's do slow food." So, you know, they have this event where you have all these people from all over the world. They have their products. So the eggplant actually came here, you know, with their seedlings that the students helped to prepare. Maybe not to this one, but they went in general. And so, yeah, I've been, and it's just these products that you've never seen in your life that are just so particular from certain areas. So yes, this is the famed eggplant that they saved from the single plot of an aging farmer. And that a lot of the plot holders are really passionate about because, you know, they have stories. Like this one man was telling a story about this onion that he remembered tasting from his childhood. And he said, that onion is gone. That flavor that I had is gone. So they have experienced this, so they understand the importance of preserving this. And also not just that, but also the biological diversity of the area. Like I said, you know, there's a lot of olive tree monocultures now. And they said, you know what, it didn't used to be like this. It wasn't always olive trees. We had almonds, you know, we had dates, we had other things. And now it's just one massive field of olive. I mean, olive trees are beautiful, but it creates problems. Like, again, any monoculture causes problems. So, you know, you can make a value-added product from it, which brings an important source of, you know, finance, but it has like ecological costs. So this eggplant is special because, of course, it's like, you know, very much adapted to the local territory. So you can have high production without high inputs. So with the climate crisis, it's great. Not only that, but you can eat it raw. You can eat the eggplant raw. And it's, you know, and it's great for cooking. It's delicious. And I remember one time I had some of these eggplant and I brought them back in my backpack and I forgot about them for almost 3 weeks and they were still great. I made a sandwich and they were fine. They weren't moldy or anything like that. You know, so yeah, you know, and there's kind of these small compact little, you know, or aubergine, I guess I should say aubergine. So yeah, and this is the farmer. So yeah, this is the farmer just handing out slices for us to eat in the field of aubergine. So, you know, taken in this context, how successful has this community of practice been in, you know, in doing that whole like window into the territory that they want to do? So let's start with some of the problems, right? I mentioned that there was this this integrated canal system. Integrated canal system is broken. Like they, you know, a lot of the infrastructure, it's not necessarily super safe, and including the water system. So the one water system is controlled by the municipality. So a lot of the beginning of the COP, which is kind of crazy because they're like, we want to revitalize the gardens, but you have to go through this lengthy bureaucratic procedure for us to give you access to the one source of water. So they got access to the water, right? And at first it was free because they are revitalizing the garden. They're doing all this work of bringing these gardens back to life and something that you want to look at. And yeah, then they started charging like a lot to use it. So the like one safe water source. So that's an issue. They're like, okay, so the municipality owns the gardens, manages the gardens, but where are they? So what the COP did is, with the backing of all these institutions, we pushed the municipality to give access to the water, you know, and to move through, to like sit down and be like, okay, there are these bureaucratic procedures, but we have to move forward with this. You know, do you want these gardens back or not? So, you know, we have to push them and get them more involved. The first meeting, the mayor wasn't there. After a few meetings, the mayor showed up for 5 minutes, gave a speech with, you know, that wasn't really about anything, and then said, sorry, I have a meeting. By the end, he was there for the whole thing, gave a more lengthy speech, and actually sat down with some of the people afterwards. So, you know, helping to push them, get them more involved, and help them navigate, again, because these are not farmers. They don't necessarily know how to navigate all this stuff, like organic certification, or how to set up a committee, which they've now done, so that they can have a representative that when the municipality tries to do something, like increase the water price, they can write a strongly worded letter and be like, I, a representative of the committee, am writing you da-da-da-da, to push them. So, but yeah, water access and cost. Some, like I said, these gardens were abandoned. One plot had asbestos in it, and some of the other plots were filled with garbage. Again, abandoned. So people were like, we'll use it as a dump, which again is crazy because of all the, you know, its rich history, you know, just throwing garbage on top. And then, of course, it just exacerbated by the over-touristification, especially of the old town. So you have one of the COP members saying, I live in the historical district, you know, these kind of warrens of old stone. I also live in the old district of my town, which is not this one, but a different one. And, you know, these areas that used to be really sketchy. Like I spoke to, you know, a local of my town, and she said, yeah, when I was a kid, like there would be mafia, like gunfights and stuff in the streets. People basically used it as their toilet. And, you know, there were crazy people there that like didn't, you know, they like scuff out the numbers on houses to kind of like keep a low profile. Now it's mostly doctors and lawyers that live there, you know. So and Airbnbs, so many Airbnbs, so much construction in Airbnbs, or B&Bs in general, I should say, just the Airbnbs. So you're saying, yeah, you know, in the historical center now there's more B&Bs than houses, and there's so much construction. I'm trying to get my tractor on the field from the historical district, and there's so much construction, I'm like blocked, and I have to go like all the way around to like actually get to the garden. So yeah, and so all these tourists dumps trash in the canals, the old canal system, you know, and municipality, they gave these gardens, they're like, okay, you clean it up, you clean up the garbage. So that we give you this land, and now you just, you know, you're cleaning it up. So, you know, it's not necessarily super easy to take something that's abandoned and make it nice again, because while it's abandoned, it gets trashed. We live in a world where like everything is like toxic. You have all these like asbestos stuff, It's not necessarily easy to remediate these sorts of things. And then, of course, there's the bureaucratic burden associated with certification. So, especially for these sorts of things, where you have a million different crops, right? And you have to register each different one, some of which might not even be on the registry because they're like something that's almost extinct. So you type it into the system, and it's not in the system. I'm almost done.
Sorry about it.
Yeah, so plus it's expensive. It's a nightmare. It can be a nightmare. So you need help. You need people with connections and who know how to navigate these complex systems. So yeah, kind of in conclusion, key takeaways. We have some strategies, right? The leader program, the labels, Presidia, communities of practice. They can help kind of push a more agroecological transition of the territory, bring people together. They didn't do nothing, right? They definitely did something. But you have, the plot holders, they weren't necessarily really passionate about, they're passionate about their territory. But in terms of like coming to the meetings and doing all this stuff, they weren't always like, it wasn't like they were super enthused about it all the time. It's a mixed bag. So it might become an example, and for sure, that cooperative is going to stay there no matter what, and it's going to farm the land. Whether they're able to have the resources to save more species and really make it something that other people rally around, that remains to be seen. I think that it could happen, especially with all the institutional support, but it's not a sure thing. So there are these, and Ostuni is not alone, there are other innovative frameworks, right, that especially boosted by EU funding, by regional funding. But so there's potential, but we're not quite there. So with that, I'm going to leave you with an image of the gardens before they were abandoned, and this was taken from the cooperative's website. I think, as I interpreted it, as something that people want to, as a vision of what it was, but maybe what it can be again. So, and this was in 1965. So yeah, I want to now pass it off to you. What did you think about this? What are your questions? Do you have any strategies that helped you with, for example, Coventry, or for something else that we could take as part of the ATTER project and sharing knowledge that we can take back with us and, use to help this situation, make it even better? So yeah, that's, how do I stop I know I just stopped the recording at this point, right? So how do I do that?
Yeah, I'll stop consent. But first of all, we should give you a round of applause.
Oh.
Yeah, so any questions? I think Lucas has got his hand up. Stop recording.
No,